16th of May, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. And before we get started, these are the stories we're following at this hour. Ruining the diplomatic mood, North Korea calls off high-level talks with South Korea over Seoul's ongoing military exercises with the U.S. Is Pyongyang reverting to its previous posture of ultimatums and threats? South Korea struggles to shake off its unemployment crisis. The needle on unemployment remains unchanged, with the number of new jobs stuck in the 100,000 range for 3 straight months. And in a bid to rectify the situation, lawmakers are opening a session to talk about the government's supplementary budget. Fiery exchanges between Israeli and Palestinian envoys at the UN following the deadly encounter on the border of Gaza over the opening of the new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. But first, we start this morning with the abrupt cancellation from North Korea. Just 10 hours before today's scheduled talks with the South, North Korea pulled out of the high-level inter-Korean meeting, saying Seoul's ongoing military exercises with the U.S. were ruining the diplomatic mood. It is in stark contrast to what the regime has been saying in regards to joint military exercises in the past couple weeks, when it seemed to be more understanding. It's laying the blame on South Korea's feet for its joint drills with the U.S. Watching in this rapid development in mood on the Korean Peninsula is our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee, who is on the line for us. Jung-hee, it appears that North Korea might be going back to its old bargaining tactics.
Se-min, not only did the North notify South Korea of the cancellation via the inter-Korean contact channel, but Pyongyang also posted a very long statement through its state media. It explained it could not help but call off today's high-level talks specifically because of the Max Thunder exercise, a combined Air Force drill between South Korea and the U.S. that started last Friday. Pyongyang called the drill an apparent challenge to the Panmunjom Declaration and an intentional military provocation. The North stated that South Korea is breaking the two Koreas' promise to lower military tensions, and therefore Seoul is to blame for the cancellation. Pyongyang warned the improvement in inter-Korean relations and its dialogue momentum with the U.S. doesn't mean Seoul and Washington can hold their combined drills anytime. What's worrisome is that Pyongyang even left open the possibility of canceling its summit with the U.S., saying Washington will have to consider the fate of their summit as well.
Now, a complete shift in tone from North Korea indeed. Do we have anything from the South Korean government on what would have been the first inter-Korean interaction following last month's summit?
It's known that South Korean officials were indeed surprised and perplexed because, as you've mentioned, the North has not brought up the issue of joint drills as an issue until now. Also, it was just yesterday that Pyongyang suggested holding high-level talks today, which was already days after the Max Thunder exercises kicked off. On his way to work this morning, South Korea's Unification Minister Cho Myung-gyun told reporters that the government will try to read North Korea's message thoroughly and will send a reply to Pyongyang soon, although what it'll say remains to be seen. Asked whether the North's move poses fundamental difficulties in implementing the Panmunjom Declaration, the minister said he doesn't believe so. He added, everything is in the early stages and different circumstances can present themselves, so it's important for the two Koreas to stay consistent. The South Korean government issued an official response, is believed to have issued an official response just a few minutes ago, so I'll make sure to bring you the details in our next newscast. Meanwhile, it's known that the White House convened a meeting after the North's announcement and plans to reveal its stance soon. The U.S. State Department spokesperson said this announcement from Pyongyang won't have any impact on preparing for the Pyongyang-Washington summit next month, and the U.S. won't be wavered. She added North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has rather said he understands the importance of the joint drills for South Korea and the U.S. The Pentagon also stated that the drills are purely defensive in nature. Se-min.
Our Oh Jung-hee at the Unification Office. Thank you for that. South Korea's top office is focused on evaluating North Korea's pre-dawn cancellation of a planned high-level talks with the South and its threat to pull out of a historic summit next month between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump. Officials at the top office earlier this Tuesday morning were still trying to wrap their heads around at the North's surprise declaration, which came just hours before they were to head off to the border village of Panmunjom to meet their northern counterparts for a planned meeting. Now, in the dispatch, Pyongyang claimed it was due to the ongoing joint military exercises between South Korea and the U.S. A key official at the Blue House said the presidential office at this point was trying to figure out the North's true intention in sending out such a message, and that the South Korean government's official response will be announced by the Unification Ministry at 10 a.m. Korea time, as our just Oh Jung-hee reported. And staying with that story, South Korea's defense minister is believed to be holding hastily arranged talks with the head of the U.S. Forces Korea General Vincent Brooks on North Korea's cancellation of today's inter-Korean talks. Multiple sources familiar with the matter say Minister Song Young-moo canceled his previously arranged schedule to meet with Brooks. Now, the two reportedly exchanged views on the North's sudden about-face on today's talks and Pyongyang's threat to cancel its summit with the U.S. And asked about the meeting, South Korea's defense ministry refused to confirm the reports. So what exactly is the Max Thunder exercises that has made North Korea angry enough not only to call off its high-level talks with the South, but to also make it reconsider its high-stakes summit in Singapore with President Trump next month? Our Lee Seung-jae takes a closer look.
Last year's Max Thunder exercise began on April 21, 2017. Back then, North Korea waited 5 days before responding with this largest ever live-fire exercise. This year's Max Thunder drill, which began last Friday and is scheduled to run for 2 weeks, led to North Korea cancel a high-level inter-Korean meeting set for Wednesday and even threaten to pull the plug on the Pyongyang-Washington summit scheduled for June 12th in Singapore. The joint exercise takes place annually and is the largest military flying exercise held on the Korean peninsula. It's part of a continuous exercise program designed to enhance its interoperability between South Korean and U.S. forces and is not tied to any specific real-world events or situations. It has also been regarded as an exercise that highlights the long-standing military partnership, commitment, and enduring friendship between the two allies to help ensure peace and security in Northeast Asia. So how is the Max Thunder exercise being held this year? The joint exercise involves some 100 warplanes, including 8 F-22 radar-evading fighters and an unspecified number of B-52 bombers and F-15K jets. But the highlight of this year's exercise are the 8 F-22 fighter jets that are making their debut. Equipped with the state-of-the-art stealth technology, the 5th-generation fighter jet is known to be capable of bringing down 100 4th-generation fighters, like the F-15 and the F-16, on its own. The main bay of the F-22 Raptor can accommodate 6 launchers for beyond visual range missiles, and each side bay has launchers for short-range missiles. If that isn't devastating enough, 4 of the launchers can be replaced with 2 bomb racks that can each carry 1,000-pound bombs. Could the sheer size of the exercise be the reason for North Korea's sudden about-face? While Max Thunder is known to be routine and defensive in nature, both allies are now left hoping this year's exercise won't put a dampener on the path to peace. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And staying with North Korea and on the international front, the regime seems to be making different noises. Pyongyang has vowed to join international efforts to ban all nuclear tests, and that's what its ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva said as he addressed the disarmament conference on Tuesday. Our Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
North Korea has proclaimed its intentions to join global efforts to ban nuclear weapons tests. Its ambassador to the UN in Geneva, Han Dae-sung, told the Conference on Disarmament on Tuesday that, quote, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea will join international desires and efforts for a total ban on nuclear tests. This is the first time the regime has made such claims aimed at a total ban on nuclear tests. While Han did not explicitly mention the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, watchers interpret the remark as Pyongyang's intentions to join the international agreement ahead of the historic North Korea-U.S. summit slated for June 12th. Pyongyang has yet to rejoin the treaty since it withdrew from it in 2003. It's one of the 8 countries with nuclear test capability, including the U.S., China, and India, which have not yet signed or ratified the treaty, hindering the agreement from taking effect. In his address, Han also said the North aims to exert more efforts to develop inter-Korean relations and alleviate military tensions on the Korean peninsula. The U.S. Ambassador on Disarmament, Robert Wood, welcomed Han's remarks, adding that he hopes the upcoming summit between the two countries could serve as an opportunity to establish peace and prosperity on the Korean peninsula. Han's announcement comes as the North said last weekend that it will completely destroy its nuclear test site in Punggye-ri in front of invited foreign media. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
And the head of the World Food Program says North Korea is changing, adding that there's more cooperation and optimism than in the past. Now, his comments came at a press briefing in Seoul on Tuesday following his own 4-day trip to the north last week. Our Park Ji-won reports.
At a press briefing in central Seoul Tuesday afternoon, the World Food Program's executive director, David Beasley, told reporters about his team's impressions of North Korea based on their 4-day visit to the north last week. His team spent 2 days in Pyongyang, meeting key political figures like North Korea's ceremonial leader Kim Young-nam, and spent the other 2 days visiting villages in the countryside. The WFP chief said he could sense tremendous sense of optimism in the leadership and in the people in one of the most reclusive states in the world, saying they were granted more access and more local cooperation than in past years. He added that although cases of poverty and malnutrition still exist, he didn't see cases of starvation, which he used to witness in the north back in the 1990s.
Going from village to village, while we did not see starvation, there's clearly issues of undernutrition or malnutrition, very little mechanization, very few paved roads. This is springtime. I saw men and women out in the fields working, very structured, very organized, every inch of land being utilized, working with oxen and plows, shovels, rakes, hoes, manual labor tools.
The WFP head also said he could feel the changing attitudes of North Korean officials and its people and their yearnings for new opportunities for growth.
What was pleasing was it seemed to be a genuine desire to be more open and more frank and candid discussions.
Regarding South Korea's previous vow to donate some $4.5 million of humanitarian assistance to North Korea through the WFP, the head of the WFP said he doesn't yet to know about the exact timeline of the donation, and he hopes to continue close consultation with the South Korean government. Meanwhile, following the WFP chief's meeting with South Korea's Unification Minister Cho Myung-gyun on Tuesday afternoon, he is also scheduled to meet South Korea's Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa on Wednesday to discuss humanitarian assistance to North Korea and close mutual consultation on future projects. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
More glum figures on the job market. The latest jobs figure shows that the number of newly added jobs in Korea was barely above the 100,000 mark in April, the third consecutive month that the figure has been in the 100,000 range, the worst performance since the 2008 global financial crisis. Statistics Korea says that only 26.8 million people were employed in Korea last month, up 123,000 from the same period last year. Job creation dropped in the education, services, retail, and wholesale sectors, as well as the manufacturing sector over its sluggish shipping and auto industries. And the unemployment rate came in at 4.1% last month, down 0.1 of a percentage point on year. And that figure for young people still high at 10.7%. And to help cope with that depressing jobs figure, lawmakers at the National Assembly are going over the multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget bill aimed at creating quality jobs. Now, this progress at the parliament comes after an over a month-long standstill with the rival political parties blocking each other's moves. We have our Kim Mo-gyeon on the line for us with the details. Mo-gyeon, so what's expected from the Budget Committee meeting today?
Hi, Semin. Just a few minutes ago, the Parliamentary Special Committee on Budget and Accounts kicked off a general meeting at 10 a.m., beginning its long-delayed review of the proposed extra budget aimed at addressing the nation's serious problem of youth unemployment. Some 6 other parliamentary standing committees, such as the National Policy Committee and the Agriculture, Food, Rural Affairs, Oceans and Fisheries Committee, have also begun their pre-screening of the budget this morning, as National Assembly Speaker Chung Se-gyun asked for the committees to finish their pre-evaluation before 9:30 a.m., 30 minutes ahead of the general meeting. The standing committees have until tomorrow to finalize their reviews, as the Special Committee on Budget and Accounts will refer the extra budget bill to its subcommittee on Thursday so that it can finally be put to a vote during Friday's plenary session. The extra budget proposal had been submitted by the government in early April, but its screening had been delayed as the National Assembly has been paralyzed due to partisan squabbles over the online opinion rigging scandal and a set of contested bills, including the budget proposal. Rival parties finally made an agreement on the issues to bring Parliament back to normal on Monday and have agreed to put the supplementary budget bill to a vote by Friday. Back to you, Semin.
All right, Kim Mo-gyeon watching the progress at the National Assembly. It's becoming an all too familiar story. South Korea has once again condemned Japan and lodged a complaint with Tokyo over its latest renewed territorial claim to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. Now, this time, Japan's false claim came in a foreign policy document reported to its cabinet. And watchers say such moves suggest that Tokyo does not seem overly concerned about dampening the peaceful mood in the region that has been enjoying that for the past couple months. Our Lee Ji-won explains.
Japan has thrown a wet blanket over the recent reconciliatory mood springing up in East Asia. In its annual foreign policy document, the Diplomatic Blue Book, it has once again repeated its false claim to South Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island, saying Dokdo is illegally occupied by South Korea. It was a move that was immediately denounced on Tuesday by Seoul's foreign ministry.
Our government strongly protests against Japan's Diplomatic Blue Book having repeated this claim to South Korea's sovereign territory of Dokdo, and it strongly urges Tokyo to immediately drop the claim.
The spokesperson said Seoul reiterates that the claim is futile and has no impact whatsoever on South Korea's sovereignty over Dokdo, which is justified historically, geographically, and by international law. He also said the claim is unjustified and absurd and warned that it will only hinder the development of Seoul-Tokyo ties. In its Blue Book, Japan also claimed again that the body of water between Japan and Korea should be called the Sea of Japan, a name it said is the only one confirmed internationally. Seoul's foreign ministry called in the deputy chief of mission at the Japanese embassy, Koichi Mizushima, to lodge a formal complaint. The complaint said in particular that Seoul cannot accept the Sea of Japan label, saying it is rightfully called the East Sea, a name that has been used in Korea for over 2,000 years. The Japanese document also urged Seoul to implement the so-called Comfort Women Agreement, reached in 2015, which was meant to provide support for the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. The deal did not take into consideration the opinions of the victims or include an official sincere apology from Japan and has been neglected for months. While Japan's claims are not new, what's notable this year is that there is much more material related to Dokdo and the Comfort Woman issue compared to last year. It has also deleted a phrase that called South Korea Japan's most important neighbor that shares strategic interests. And doing little to build closer ties with North Korea, the document condemned the regime's nuclear tests and missile launches as severe threats and maintained its hardline stance. Ties between South Korea and Japan seem to be on the mend since their three-way talks with China last week. But observers say Japan's lack of repentance for its past wrongdoings could isolate it further on North Korean issues, especially with even Pyongyang urging Japan to apologize. 이지원, 아리랑 뉴스.
And now for a look at stories making headlines around the world. And we start this morning again in the Middle East. Israel is facing international backlash after its troops killed dozens of Palestinians demonstrating at the Gaza border. They were protesting against the opening of the new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem. For more on this and other news around the world, we turn to our Aram at the News Center. Aram, fill us in on the latest from the Middle East.
Well, Simon, protests were quieter Tuesday compared to the day before, but Israeli forces shot dead at least 2 more Palestinians, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. That now brings the death toll to at least 60. It appeared that many Palestinians opted to bury the dead and hold funerals for those killed instead of going back to the scene of Monday's bloodshed. They were also commemorating 70 years since Nakba, or otherwise known as catastrophe, when more than 700,000 Palestinians lost their homes in the wake of the creation of Israel in 1948. This was going on as Israeli and Palestinian envoys to the UN exchanged bitter words over the events in Gaza during an emergency meeting at the UN Security Council. The Palestinian envoy Riyad Mansour called Monday's incident a massacre by Israeli forces and a crime against humanity. Other nations expressed concern over the violence, urging Israel to act with restraint. Some of them, including Britain, have called for an independent inquiry into the matter. The UN Human Rights Council also condemned the violence along the Gaza border.
Lethal force may only be used as a measure of last, not first, resort, and only when there is an immediate threat to life or serious injury. An attempt to approach or crossing or damaging the Green Line fence do not amount to a threat of to life or serious injury and are not sufficient grounds for the use of live ammunition.
Israel's UN envoy Danny Danon, however, defended the Israeli military's actions, describing the Palestinian protests as violent riots. Israel has said it was acting in self-defense of its borders, blaming Gaza's Islamist rulers Hamas. This sentiment was backed by the US envoy to the UN, who said Israel had actually shown restraint.
I asked my colleagues here in the Security Council, who among us would accept this type of activity on your border? No one would. No country in this chamber would act with more restraint than Israel has. In fact, the records of several countries here today suggest they would be much less restrained.
In other news, Facebook has for the first time made public data about inappropriate content found and deleted on the social network. In its Community Standards Enforcement Report released on Tuesday, Facebook said it had disabled some 583 million fake accounts in the first 3 months of this year. The figure accounts for more than a quarter of the site's 2.2 billion monthly active users. The social network giant also reported it had deleted 837 million pieces of spam and 2.5 million instances of hate speech during the same period. Facebook has come under intense pressure recently over the use of private data and the exposure of harmful content. As an erupting volcano in Hawaii continues to wreak havoc, officials now say toxic gases emanating from the side of the Kilauea volcano is adding to the danger facing residents. Health officials are urging residents to stay indoors or leave the eastern end of Hawaii's Big Island due to dangerous levels of sulfur dioxide gas and other emissions. Besides the toxic fumes, officials said Tuesday that a 20th fissure releasing lava has opened on the mountain side. No casualties have been reported so far since the volcano erupted earlier this month, but some 2,000 residents have been ordered to evacuate, but many are refusing to leave.
Good morning. Wednesday's rain has washed away the dust in the air and dragged down the temperatures to seasonal averages. Rain clouds are dropping heavy rain on the northern parts of the country, so those of us in the capital area should also expect to see rain picking up in the evening. Up to 120 millimeters are expected between now and Friday, while southern regions will see a break in the rain this afternoon, and most parts will see on and off showers until Friday. And as for today's daily highs, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 23 degrees Celsius, which is about 5 to 7 degrees lower than yesterday, while Jeju will be under mostly sunny skies without any rainfall. Now the rain will continue until Friday over Korea. Then sunshine will return just in time for the weekend. That's Korea for you, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that'll do it for us at the hour on Arirang News. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.